Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the master behind one of modern mysticism's most powerful voices. We're talking about a teacher whose lessons on imagination have influenced millions, yet he remains almost a complete mystery. So if you're in the world of manifestation, the name Neville Goddard has definitely popped up on your radar, right? He's kind of famous for teaching that our imagination literally creates our reality. But as you're about to see, the real story, well, it doesn't start with him. You see, Neville himself said that everything he learned, and I mean everything, he learned from one man, a teacher who didn't just give him a few tips, but completely transformed him from the inside out. Okay, let's get into this. Well, meet Abdullah. Picture this, an Ethiopian-born Jewish mystic living in New York City, right in the middle of the Great Depression. His methods? Super direct. His faith? Absolutely unshakable. And his core message was so simple, yet totally earth-shattering. Your imagination is God. So here's where we're going to break down Abdullah's entire system. We're going to start with the core theory. Then we'll look at the psychological principle that makes it all tick. From there, we'll move to the actual practical method you can use. And finally, we'll see the proof in the most famous story of its incredible success. All right, so what was this revolutionary idea that Abdullah was teaching? It all boils down to something called the law of assumption. At its heart, the law is pretty simple. Whatever you assume to be true, deep down in your consciousness, that's what becomes your reality. It has nothing to do with wishing or wanting. It's all about a persistent internal conviction that your desire is already a done deal. Abdullah taught that you don't attract what you want because the very act of wanting just screams to the universe that you don't have it. Instead, you attract what you fundamentally, truly believe to be true about yourself and your world, right here, right now. Now, this whole law rests on three, honestly, mind-bending pillars. First, your imagination isn't just a tool, it is the creative power of the universe. Full stop. Second, creation is finished. This means every possibility you can dream of already exists. You aren't creating anything new, you're just selecting a reality with your focus. And third, and this one is so crucial, your identity comes first. You have to become the person who has what you want in your mind before you can ever see it in your world. Okay, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds a little out there, right? Purely mystical. But Abdullah's teaching actually lines up with some pretty powerful psychological principles. Let's look at how this really works with the mind. You see, what Abdullah was really teaching was a super potent form of subconscious programming. Modern science tells us that our subconscious beliefs are what drive our actions, our perceptions, our choices, everything. By changing that core assumption deep inside, you're basically installing a brand new operating system for your mind. And this is where it gets really interesting, because it's so different from the mainstream law of attraction. The law of attraction often focuses on wanting something, which, if you think about it, just reinforces the feeling that you don't have it. But the law of assumption, it's all about being. It's an active, personal identification with the end result, which generates the feeling that it's already done. It's not passive wishing, it's active being. Abdullah had this very, let's say, blunt way of driving this point home with his most famous metaphor. You're either all in on your assumption or you're not. There's just no middle ground, no half measures. Once a desire is conceived in your imagination, you have to carry it to term with total, unwavering faith. This was the Abdullah standard. He demanded a complete and total shift in your mindset. You stop trying and start knowing. You stop doubting and you start persisting. You stop looking outside yourself for signs and you start living from the internal reality. See the pattern? It all boils down to one thing. It's about being, not seeking. So, okay, how did Abdullah actually teach Neville to do this? Let's get practical and see how all this builds into a real actionable method. The method is, well, surgically simple. First, you have to define your end goal with crystal clarity. Second, you create a very short scene in your mind that would only happen after your wish was fulfilled. Third, you loop that scene over and over again, especially as you're falling asleep, until it feels completely real. And finally, and this is the hardest part for most of us, you just drop it. You persist in the faith that it is done, and you refuse to give any energy to doubt or worry. Now for the part we've all been waiting for, the proof. Does this stuff actually work? Well, the most famous story of this method in action is what Neville called the Barbados miracle, and it is a perfect case study. So picture it. It's the winter of 1933. Neville desperately wants to go home to Barbados for Christmas, but he is flat broke. Abdullah's instruction was just blunt. You are in Barbados. He told Neville to go to sleep each night in Barbados, in his imagination. So Neville did it. He felt the warm tropical air, he saw his mother's house all around him, and then, a little while later, an unexpected letter shows up with money from his brother. Then, a first-class ticket suddenly becomes available at the last minute. He ended up sailing on the exact ship he had imagined. And this story just perfectly reveals the core truth of Abdullah's teaching. Living in the end isn't some clever little mental trick you do once in a while. No, it's a discipline of your identity. It's about fundamentally changing who you are on the inside first. Abdullah's method is so powerful because it's so precise. It strips away all the mental clutter we get caught up in, the emotional roller coaster, the anxiety of waiting, the poison of doubt, the need for logic, and that constant need to check for signs of progress. All of it gone. And it all comes down to this. The commitment required isn't 99%, it's 100%. Absolute. Unwavering. Just like he said, you can't be a little bit pregnant, you can't be a little bit in your assumption. You're either in or you're out. This quote just sums it all up perfectly, doesn't it? Your only responsibility is to stay faithful to your end state in your imagination. How it all happens, what Neville called the bridge of incidents, that's not your concern. You just trust the process to unfold. And that brings us to the final, really provocative thought. Abdullah's teaching places all the power and all the responsibility squarely in your hands. So, if your consciousness truly is the only reality, then the world you experience tomorrow begins with the world you consciously decide to inhabit tonight. The question is, what will you choose?